Casey, I think a classic story that we hear a lot from people who start podcasts is that they pour their heart and soul into each of their podcast episodes, and then they get so few views. And meanwhile, they see all these other podcasts that are making very trivial content that feels so basic, and they see these other podcasts getting so many views, and they go, why is my podcast that's providing so much deep value to people flatlining, while these other shows that are barely skimming the surface are blasting off?
Yeah, it's a huge question. Well, I think we should answer that for people.
I think we should too, because it comes down to choosing the right topics for the growth stage that your podcast is currently in. So let's jump into it. Welcome to Podcast Support, the show where we tackle the questions that every podcaster needs answered to grow a successful show. Whether you're just getting started out or scaling an existing audience, we break down the roadblocks, share practical strategies, and give you step-by-step answers so you can spend less time guessing and more time building the podcast that you want.
Thank you for contacting Podcast Support.
So when we think about what types of topics we want to talk about on our podcast and what is going to go viral and what's going to get the most views, it's really helpful to place our ideas for topics on a sales funnel and to think about things as there's 3 different categories of ideas. There's top of funnel content ideas, there's middle of funnel content ideas, and there's bottom of funnel content ideas. And ideas that are placed on the top of a funnel are going to go viral. The ideas that get placed on the bottom of a funnel are going to actually get us sales and actually get us conversions from our audience members into customers.
Yeah, the way I like to think about it is that at the top of the funnel, you have awareness, and then you have information for those people who want a little bit further information on whether or not they should buy. And then finally, the decision making of, okay, I'm going to go ahead and buy this thing. When you're thinking about these, you want to make sure that you have stuff that's executing at all of these different levels. And then it's about figuring out which ones you want to be solving right now. And so what I would say for most people is that you want to start off with awareness and then you want to build through. And the reason for that is because if you're not getting to people, then you probably don't have a very good chance of closing someone. And so it's the same way we would operate with any of those types of things. It's the same way, I think a good example of this is if you're trying to grow on YouTube with your podcast, you want to think about your titles and thumbnails before you do, making sure that every single stage of your podcast is as good as possible. Because if you don't get people clicking through to the video, then who cares about how good the podcast is, because no one's going to be seeing it. And so you want to be thinking about the same thing when you're thinking about your content funnel. And the nice thing about this is that for most people who, we're at least talking to, you have a business, you have a way that you want to be driving people towards purchasing something. And so you can look at that as an example and as a flow for your actual sales funnel itself.
Yeah, exactly. Because if no one is going in the top of your funnel, there's no one to come out the bottom of your funnel. So you need those basic awareness videos that are going to appeal to the masses on YouTube and Spotify and all the other social media platforms. But I think that where we run into some confusion where, 2 pieces of advice start to beat up against each other is this idea that you need to have these broad awareness videos that appeal to everyone while also niching down. And so how do we balance those 2 things? How do we have our niche? How do we promise a specific transformation and tell people this is exactly what you're going to get out of listening to me, while also making content that's going to appeal to as many people as possible?
Yeah, it can be really challenging. I think, we have to start with that. This is a big frustration point in podcasting because people who are experts have a hard time of understanding that most people don't want to be experts in their field. They want an answer and they want to move on. And so when we're thinking about how do we get somebody to just pay attention to us? Well, we need to do either one of 2 things. We need to teach them something invaluable that they want to pass on to another person because they think it's so valuable and they have such a big insight with it. Or the second one is they need to have a strong opinion. And so you want to be hitting one of these 2 things is wow, I learned something. Holy shit, that was like a great takeaway. I'm going to pass this along to somebody, because if you've got that, then you can be on the K curve of virality and you can be really expanding to people. And so like with that, you want to look at, shares or any type of those types of things when you're looking at metrics. But the other one, which I'm becoming like, I mean, it might be old information, but I think it's new information for the business sector on thinking about podcasts, of that you need to have people have an opinion on something. I was literally just doing a sales call today with this guy who his podcast is not in a niche that like 99% of the world cares about. But for him, like he can absolutely make a killing with this podcast because he can get to his target audience and get them interested in things. But one of the things we were talking about the most is, well, okay, once you have the podcast, you've created it, how do you make anybody care about it? And one of the biggest things was just, well, you need to share your opinions. You can't just share a random string of facts, because for the most part, people don't really care about, the exact way you're supposed to do something. They want to know the right way you should do something. And the right way is an opinion. There's no right way to pretty much anything in the world. So you just have to have an opinion, and you have to state it, and you have to state it firmly and believe in it. You have to have passion behind it. And once you do that, you're going to have the magical thing, which is that people either agree with you or they disagree with you. And you want them to do one of those two things, because that means that they have an opinion on it and that they are now engaged in what you're saying.
Getting other people to viscerally react to how you think about something is one of the best ways to get engagement. Even if it's whether it's that they are just like, oh my God, like, yes, preach, please, or they're like, you're an idiot. Either way, they're engaging with your content and they're helping you grow.
And it's why I believe so heavily in gamifying within your podcast, because it's a hack towards getting people to have an opinion. Because if you're just talking about something, maybe somebody agrees with you, maybe somebody disagrees with you. But the second that you rank them, that you say, oh, you're going to buy or sell this thing, or, oh, you know what, I'm going to draft this thing number 1, I'm going to draft this thing number 3, immediately people are put into a position of agreeing with you or disagreeing with you and having an opinion.
I think that one aspect of this that does get a little scary for people relating to the niche and like the top of funnel content kind of banging up against each other is that it kind of feels like a MrBeast-ification of everything. And for anyone who doesn't know MrBeast, biggest YouTuber in the world, he makes content that is for everyone. And it is like, it's just designed to be watchable and to appeal to any viewer and be very clickable for any occasion. And so I think that people, like, there's this fear that if we make too much of our content like that, then everything is just vapid.
Yeah.
And 100%. I think it's super valid. I think that the way to combat that is to be realistic about how big your total addressable market is. If you want your total addressable market to be everyone, you are going to end up being MrBeast of your industry. And you probably don't want that. So you just have to lower that down to what is actually realistic. And then
what I would even say is that you can't be Mr. Beast unless you're talking about nothing in particular.
That's actually pretty true.
So if you already have a niche, then it's going to be really hard for you to talk that vapidly and to talk and talk that much about nothing. And like, that's not even a diss on MrBeast, because let's be honest, he has so much money that he doesn't have to care about my opinion. But when it comes to people in there, this is just going to be me talking about meetings that I've had recently, but I was doing some research for a potential client that we were talking with, and he was talking about that he wants to get to 5,000 downloads within 1 year per episode. And I had to be like, hey man, that's not necessarily reasonable. If you look at the stats for podcasting, if you have 4,000 downloads per episode within the first 7 days, you're in the top 1% of podcasts in the world. And so we need to I hope people hear that, because we need to reassert what success is in this market and why we're doing this thing in the first place, which is what brings us, to the the information stage of the content funnel, because you want to make sure that you're not just talking about nothing, that you are providing value, because what we want is valuable listeners. We don't want invaluable or general listeners. That's just not the game that we're playing. If we were, this podcast would be completely different, because we would talk to people who all they need to be looking at is number of views. Instead, what we need to be looking at is how those views turn into an ROI for somebody. And the way that you do that is by having high value listeners who are engaged, who are decision makers in your market, or strategic partners that you can get together with. Like, they need to fit into one of those three things.
I totally agree with that. And I think honestly, that's exactly why this is so important, of understanding why we make all three of these types of content, to make sure that we are actually, because that awareness content is never going to get you a sale. But the bottom of the funnel content absolutely will get you a sale.
So let me ask you, when you're talking about this, are you imagining, because I'm sure that our listeners are wondering, are you imagining that these are put out in different areas for distribution? Or are you just saying, that these are aspects of the podcast that need to be considered?
I'm saying that a certain amount of your episodes should fall within each of these categories. So just if you have 5 episodes a month, because there's 5 Mondays in a month that you're releasing on, let's say, then like 3 of those, and this ratio depends on the stage of growth that you're in. Yeah.
Also hilarious to go with 5 Mondays.
Dude, I feel like every time that I think about it, it's always that there's 5. There's always 5 of some day of the week that I have to release a podcast on some month.
Yeah, sure.
You should have 3 top of funnel awareness podcast topics, 1 middle of funnel, and 1 bottom of funnel topic. And that would be your 5 episodes. So that you have 3 episodes that are driving growth and bringing in new listeners, 1 episode that's moving those followers deeper into your sales funnel, down into the bottom, and then 1 that's converting them into ideal customers, and then actually encouraging them to buy. And that's how I think that we use this sales funnel in order to actually, choose what topics we're going to talk about each month, so that we know we're actually putting out enough podcasts that are going to grow and enough podcasts that are going to convert.
Yeah, totally.
I've got a little thing for you real quick. I've got someone's channel open right now. He's a YouTube expert. And I'm going to say 3 different names of videos that he's got. And I want you to tell me if you think that those are top of funnel, middle of funnel, or bottom of funnel, and which one's got the most views.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay. So the first one is why YouTube isn't showing your videos to anyone. Is that top of funnel, middle of funnel, or bottom of funnel?
I'm going to say that's top of funnel.
Okay. And then the next one is, and you could change this once we have all 3 of them. How to upload videos on YouTube in 2026, parentheses, the right way.
Oh man, these are kind of tough. Read me the third one. Let me get them all, and then I'll tell you. Because
why YouTube feels harder than it used to.
Okay, so that one, I'm going to say that the second one was awareness. The third one was bottom of the funnel conversion. And the first one was the second, information.
You got it exactly right. And the bottom funnel one, why YouTube feels harder than it used to, got 5.4 thousand views. The middle of funnel content, why YouTube isn't showing your videos to anyone, got 14,000 views. And the top of funnel content, how to upload videos on YouTube in 2026, got 118,000 views. And the reasons why I think that these are really good examples is that how to upload videos on YouTube, and that relates to everybody interested in the topic of creating on YouTube, whether you have uploaded a video before or not. Everybody's interested in that video. Everybody wants to know how to do this process and how it works. Why YouTube isn't showing your videos to anyone? You need to have actually uploaded some videos in order for this video to relate to you. This is not as big of a total addressable market. This is now specifically people who have uploaded videos already and are curious about this and want to know more. They're much deeper into this. That's why it's middle of funnel content. and then why YouTube feels harder than it used to, you need to have been uploading for quite a while to have a feeling that it used to be easier. So this is like really specific people. These are people who are dedicated to YouTube and are looking for an answer to something. And that's going to convert people into a sale for you because these are people who are dedicated to this craft.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful to see those examples because you want to be making sure that when you're creating these different examples or these different styles of videos that, you know, you're not alienating your audience, that they need to feel cohesive with each other as these do, where it's, okay, well, you get interested or you find somebody through this bigger one. And then the next episode down in the information one, you know, it doesn't need to be that that's totally different or a completely different style. It's just that the subject is a little bit more specific for the audience to gain more information from. Yeah. And so it's good and it's helpful to see those examples to figure out how you can structure these yourself.
Yeah. And I think that the last thing to talk about with this is just the frustration of those of us who have podcasts that are specifically to grow a business, and how it can be frustrating to watch other podcasts in our industry that get so many views and talk about only top of funnel content.
Yep.
And meanwhile, our podcast where we're giving so much value deeper on the funnel doesn't get as many views as that, and how frustrating that can be, and why we don't want to just become that other podcast and do all of the top of funnel and do only top of funnel content.
Yeah, 100%. You know, this made me think of, and we'll spend another podcast talking about this at some point soon, but I think one of the disadvantages business podcasts have is that their stuff naturally struggles to go viral, to get that type of growth at the top of the awareness funnel. And that's because when people think about creating a podcast, they think, okay, it's something online. So the way I need to engage with people is online. And so what I would challenge people to think about is, no, this is a business. This is a business play. It's business development. If you're starting a podcast for your business, you need to think about it the same way you think about marketing anything else for your business. So one of the things I would recommend to people is, okay, if you're not getting enough awareness through just posting online, go and find people in the real world to tell about your podcast. Go to industry events, go to networking events, tell people, yeah, oh, you know what? You want to look me up? Why don't you subscribe to my podcast? Honestly, it's one of the easiest ways to get to know me. And then you say LinkedIn, podcast, and you have those two things, and suddenly you have a new subscriber to it. And there's a good chance they met you. They'll check out one episode at least. And then you know what? You've got them through the awareness cycle. And so I would just say, when we're thinking about this and we're thinking about marketing and awareness, we want to be thinking about, you know, how we can really be strategic with it.
Yeah. And podcasts in our industries that are doing only that top of funnel content and getting millions of views, they're not converting people into customers. They're not trying to they're not trying to support a general business over that. They are just trying to make money off of views.
Yeah, well, you keep saying millions of views, so because obviously then we're talking about YouTube,
like the more generic podcasts, like Mel Robbins or like.
Yeah, because I would just say that that's not who we're going against.
Yes, exactly.
You know, Mel Robbins is great, but that's not our competition.
Exactly.
Yeah, our competition is literally who is your competitor, that your day-to-day competitor. Who's the person when you're creating a pitch deck that you're saying, we're not like those guys. Those are the people you're competing with. And if they are having success in podcasting, it's because they're making it known who they are in their industry. That when they walk through the door into a meeting, people know who they are. And they know why they should talk to them and stuff. And so what you want to be doing is you want to be beating them to the room. And so that's how I think about it is, forget about ever having 1 million views. That, like, yeah, maybe one of your clips gets 1 million views one time. It's not going to be consistent. It's not going to be reliable. Instead, what you should focus on is how do you dominate the hell out of your space? And the way that you do that is by getting to meet people. And one of the best ways to get to meet people is by doing podcasting, because you get to reach out to anyone in your industry and say, hey, you're an expert in this field. Why don't you come onto the podcast, share what you know with our audience? We've got this many people listening. It's a really good time. And then, maybe afterwards we could just talk a little bit about the industry. Just do that.
I like your viewpoint. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast support. I hope you found it very helpful, and I hope that you're thinking about where your different topics are going to fall on your particular sales funnel.
Go get podcasting.
Thank you for contacting podcast support.